Good afternoon, Roberta. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm really excited for this conversation. I was hoping that we could start off by you providing a brief introduction for our audience, sort of like a movie reel of your career thus far, if that's not too much to ask. Do you mind?
Of course. Thank you much. Thank you so much, Therese, and thank you for having me. It feels so special. I mean, being like a friend of Tracker now, because I'm gonna tell everyone in a second, but I've been working with Tracker now for a while. So this year I'm celebrating my 10 years career, which feels quite a lot, but actually is not. But it's like one of the, first step box that you can tick.
Congratulations. It's an accomplishment for sure.
Thanks. Yes. So 10 years, like I've been working across different industry, from like fashion to beauty, online, so quite a lot. I'm currently the head of PR for UGG, Californian brand, most well known for their classic sheepskin boot. And I'm overseeing public relations team, the influencer marketing team, and also the product collaboration team. I think I've been lucky enough in those 10 years because I had the chance to work across also different region and different market. So I was global. I was also like working for EMEA. I was like for a time also working for Australia, and now I'm back to work for EMEA region. So I've just had the chance to work with different market, which is probably the thing that I like about my work the most, because I have always a chance to meet like different people, learn a different perspective, and learn how things work differently across different markets. So that's me in a nutshell.
What did you study? Did you know that you would go into this kind of work?
No, that's really interesting because, I studied business administration first, so pure economics, basically. Then I specialized into marketing, and then where it was when I had this like, okay, maybe amongst all the things that marketing is about, because like for the marketeer on the line and that are listening, we all know that marketing is loads of things. Mm-hmm. And I've also been learning whilst I was actually working, but while I was studying, I was like, I'm definitely not that of a analytical mind. I'm more of a creative person. I really love to like meet new people, just the human interaction. Mm-hmm. And then by chance, I got offered an internship at Luxottica, the eyewear big company. And they were like, okay, according to your profile, we think you can like suit better the PR position. Do you want to try? I wasn't super sure because back then public relation wasn't really a thing. As in, companies were really much investing in like paid channel rather than earned. Mm-hmm. So I didn't study much about what public relations was. It was mentioned that was one of the marketing lever, but they didn't go that into much detail. And I was like, yeah, sure, let's try. And then again, casually, I'm here, and it has been 10 years that I'm working into public relations. So it was very casual. So for everyone that is like, I'm doing something else, but I know that I want to do PR, it's totally fine. Like I've met people in my 10-year careers that have completely different background. So I don't think that matters a lot. It's one of those things that you learn by doing, and also it's probably about your character really more than the skills. It's about like soft skills rather than learning on the books, I think.
That intangible. And I was curious about that. I think you sort of illustrated this in that explanation, like having a backbone of economics and things like that. But I'm curious if there are, and maybe having a creative side and enjoying people a lot, which is what you just mentioned. But are those some of the superpowers that you feel like make you good at your job, or what else is it?
Yeah, and definitely. I mean, I don't want to sound like my background in economics didn't help me. I think it did help me, and is definitely helping me now more. As in, the more I grow, the more I need to have like a more top line overview, like big picture of the situation. definitely a bit of that structure and that like analytical more mind that I'm trying to develop more and more is definitely helping. But in the beginning, probably it was empathy that helped me a lot. Is a soft skill that I think PRs and like when it comes to press, but also influencers, I think needs to help and needs to have. And if they don't have, definitely is good to develop, because you'll have to be like in the background, on the backstage. You're never gonna be the front man, and you need to make sure you are empathizing enough with the person you have in front of you. That might be like the founder of the brand, it might be the editor-in-chief of a magazine, it might be the 2 millions influencer you're talking to, so that they feel super like comfortable to talk to you, open up to you, and you're getting from them what you want. So I think empathy is definitely probably one of the superpower. The other one, I'd say, having that agility in your like that agile mindset that helps you to blend in any situation. As I said, you're like a chameleon. That's actually what I think about a PR person has to be, right? You need to blend in without really like having people staring at you, because again, you are the person behind the scene, making sure everything goes smooth, making sure the editor is writing the right article, the influencer is posting the right thing, and that the spokesperson of your company is saying the right thing. So having that agility and flexibility in terms of mindset, I think really helps, because accordingly to the industry you're going to work and accordingly to the people you're going to talk to, you need to change your tone of voice. And again, just blend in. So I think, being quite flexible in terms of, again, the way you think and the way you act, it is really important. And then last but not least, like building relationship needs to be basically your bread and butter, right? So very interestingly, I don't define myself an extrovert person, but I can be very easily when I'm at work. As in my personal life, I'm a very like introvert person. I love to spend time by myself, doing my thing. I'm not like a party person in my personal life, but I really enjoy the company of people working in my same industry when it comes to work. So I just recently came back from a global press trip with editors and influencers in Iceland last week. And it was like the highlight of this month for me, because I had the chance to spend like a week with people from Japan, China, New York, Los Angeles, all around Europe, just fully immersed in like an amazing landscape and just talking anything, like from your personal life to like what UGG stands for, why we launched like a new collection now, but also in general trends, and it felt really inspiring. So I guess you have to be just good in building relationship with people.
I think they call that an introverted extrovert. I learned that term over the pandemic. I think I am too, where like you're really extroverted in certain situations, but then you need alone time to recharge and do.
Exactly.
Is that how you feel?
That is it. That is it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think that empathy and agility, the two ones that you mentioned first, both lend themselves to building relationships. Of course, the more empathy that you can summon, the more agile you can be, the more you can build relationships with all kinds of people.
And the good thing is that you can develop those skills.
Yeah.
So if someone is like, oh my God, I'm definitely not that empathic, but I guess it's also something you develop with age.
Yeah.
I think like when you are that young, you really don't care about anyone and anything. So you're just like, I'm just going to do this, etc. But I think, the more you grow up and the more you know other people and learn from them, you kind of develop this sensitivity to empathize with people, I guess.
It's so interesting. I was just going to ask you if you felt like empathy could be taught. And I agree with you that you get more of it from learned experience or from lived experience, but you can also turn something on in people's mind. So I agree that as you're younger, it's normal to be very centered on yourself, but you can sort of flip a switch and prompt people to consider other perspectives. And I think that that's a true gift to teach people that. I mean, it's gotten you very far to have that empathy backbone. I want to hear more about Iceland, but I'm going to ask you, throughout your career, you have worked for very loved brands. We met you originally at Charlotte Tilbury, and you moved from there to UGG. And I'm curious if you feel like with influencer marketing and PR broadly, but influencer marketing specifically, if there is a big difference between industries, like moving from beauty to fashion, what you've noticed as the changing texture of those industries.
Yeah, it is an interesting thing because when I was thinking and getting in the mindset of this interview, I also realized that influencer marketing is something that has developed really quickly, but also really recently. So again, when I started 10 years ago, influencer marketing wasn't a thing. Mm-hmm. So first thing first, I had to learn it as I go, as in it was not something that I learned on the books and that I could apply straight away, because back then it was just bloggers and we really weren't working with bloggers at the time. And then all of a sudden I moved to London, and then I started working at Charlotte Tilbury. It was my first experience in beauty and also my very first time I had to work with influencers. So basically I kind of learned the influencer marketing in the beauty industry. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, there are definitely learnings that I then brought from Charlotte Tilbury to UGG, so from beauty to fashion. But the beauty industry is quite peculiar, as in there are things that you do in the with beauty brands that you can't do with fashion, like they just don't work. Mm-hmm. Beauty industry is really quick, really fast. And it was interesting because I was just coming from an online retailer. So my previous experience was at Net-a-Porter. So that was easy for me to apply because I was used to like new product launches basically every week.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And with new product launches, you also had like influencer campaigns. So I guess the very first difference probably between beauty and fashion, in the way, not the online fashion industry, is more like the proper fashion industry, is like speed. So beauty is really quick, like lots of influencer campaign, one after the other. With that comes also like quality versus quantity. So I guess with beauty is like you really want to target as many people as possible.
Yeah.
So just to quote Charlotte Tilbury, we wanted to own every one makeup bag, right? So not only like we wanted every single product in the makeup bag to be Charlotte Tilbury, we also really wanted to target from 18 to 80. So literally everyone. And at some point also men with skincare. So it was lots about, again, very frequent and loads of people, lots of product, lots of send out. When it comes to fashion, it's a bit different. Of course, the cost of a lipstick is not comparable to the price and cost of a pair of shoes. So, of course, in terms of mindset, I had to quickly adapt and think, first thing first, you won't have a launch per week. You'll probably have a launch per season or per quarter. So how can you become more strategic when it comes to send out? How can you refine better your seeding list? But also, we have specific consumer profile that we want to target. So it's not about quantity. It's not about targeting everyone from 18 to 80. It's about targeting specific people. So yeah, it's like finessing those seeding lists, making sure the people we work with talk with their audience are the audience we want to target from a brand point of view. So I guess those are the two main differences that I think I can spot. But that said, again, there are lots of learnings that, having worked at Charlotte Tilbury, I brought with me at UGG and I could easily apply. One of this was definitely like taking decision based on data, and trackers comes into place here, because when I joined UGG, they were working with influencers, but not in a big scale as we are doing at the moment. They were literally just starting. So with me coming from Charlotte Tilbury, where influencer was everything basically, I was like, oh my God, it's quite obvious where we should like invest our effort now. So it was literally like basically over a season, I was joining and we were planning the autumn winter, which is also our hot season at UGG. So we started working with Tracker. We started to have some data that we could analyze and be like, okay, fine, this is where we are at the moment. We know we are just getting started, but at least we know where we can go and how fast we can grow. So I think that was also essential, and that was definitely a learning that I took from Charlotte Tilbury, because the good thing was that we were taking decision based on data, and this is what we are now doing.
In my experience, I've seen, and I hope this isn't offensive to anyone, but I feel like beauty mastered influencer marketing first, and that we've seen other industries like fashion quickly catch up. And I completely agree that it's a different landscape and different tactics, but I think that it's a real get for a brand in a different industry to hire someone with beauty experience and beauty expertise so that they can understand how to apply it. Would you agree with that statement?
I think so. And again, we don't want to offend anyone here, but I think also fashion brings with it the more traditional kind of mindset, especially the big fashion houses. They're now like getting, of course, up to speed because the world is going ahead. So they need to catch up. But I think the way they've always kind of presented themselves was like more traditional, prioritizing like press over influencers. And then all of the sudden, because it was a sudden like change, all of the sudden they found out that it was like influencers that were leading the trend. So they had to catch up really quickly. And then, as you said, they probably, even if they don't have anyone like in-house, they had to like look at what the beauty brands were doing and quickly adapt. So I totally agree.
Yeah. And it can't be a copy paste exactly for what you talked about, the product cost. Like you couldn't seed at the same volume. You don't have something new, where I feel like relationships come into play even more than a long-term relationship with influencers, because you don't have a new product to send them every single week. You need to figure out how they're going to incorporate it into their lives. Yeah,
absolutely.
Maybe that's a good bridge to thinking about measurement. You talked a lot about data, and I would assume that leveraging data, like you, to summarize perhaps poorly, when you came into UGG, you sort of looked at what they had done thus far and that there wasn't a ton of data to build off of. So you had to measure, what have we done and how can we expand from that? How do you think about goal setting and what success looks like with influencer programs?
That's exactly the question I ask myself. Now it's going to be 2 years. I joined UGG. Was the first question I asked also my boss when I joined. I was like, listen, I'm so like enthusiastic to have joined this brand. I know we are like in a new trajectory, repositioning the brand. It's very exciting, but I need to have some data and facts to build my strategy. Otherwise, I have no idea where we stand. Like I can say, this thing I've done has been a success, but based on what? So I had to have a benchmark. And again, I'm really thankful to Tracker, because not only they could provide me like the current situation, okay, this is where UGG stands, but also having that possibility to benchmark ourselves versus brands that we consider competitors. So I think this is so important. And then once I had the big picture across, again, all market, I could basically say and set objectives that I felt at time were achievable. Yeah. So I'm always about setting small, achievable, and also measurable objective, because it doesn't make any sense for me. And I've learned this by doing, of course. Probably 5 years ago, I had no idea. And I would just like aim to the moon. Sometimes I know that people say, which I'm inclined to agree, you need to aim to the moon to then like achieve your more achievable goal. Fine, but you need to have it in your mind, and then also like have those more small achievable objective that you can use to, track success, share with your partner, and make sure everyone is aligned, because of course, as we know, it takes a village to achieve what we are achieving now. UGG, what we achieved, Charlotte Tilbury is not one person, it's like big team, lots of people, internal, external. So having some common objective that everyone is aligned on is really important. So we all aiming to the same thing. So yeah, those I would say are things that I had in my mind and that helped me to get where we got so far, basically.
Yeah. Small, achievable, and measurable, and they all add up perhaps into that big moonshot that it's hard to define. Yeah. I oftentimes hear from individuals who are a little earlier in their career than you, who innately understand the power of influencers for their brand or the need for data, but they struggle to educate internally around what is a good objective with influencers, or do you have advice for people a bit earlier in their career than you who are trying to make an impact in their organization and need to educate internally?
Yeah, I mean, it isn't easy. I'm gonna start with that. It's probably the biggest challenge. I think it was a challenge when I was a bit more junior. It is a challenge right now that I'm leading a bigger team. I think the first thing that makes a difference is making sure the whole organization believes in influencer marketing. So if it's like a battle you are like fighting alone, that is going to be tricky, but it rarely happens, because if they hire you and if it's your job, that means that they are already believing in it, because there are lots of brands that they don't have like an influencer marketing person, team, whatever. So that means it's going to be hard to let them change their mind. So first thing first, I think having support from the company itself definitely helps. And then I think one thing that I found really useful is translating all this data, engagement rate, followers, in like very easy, comprehensible headlines.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's like, think about those people don't have any idea about what influencer marketing is, and try to explain it in like super simple word, making relatable example. Maybe ideally, if you have in front of you like a finance person, add more data in, so they will you'll definitely buy them.
Yeah.
If you have in front of you like more of a creative person, play with content more. But definitely my advice is translating it in a way that is comprehensible for people that have no idea about what it is. And it's not an offense. I don't think anyone is listening from like senior leadership team would get offended.
No,
sometimes they will also have at some point to explain those data to someone above them, maybe the founder or the CEO. So they need really like easy headline to basically tell the story. So that helped me a lot, especially at UGG. Just again, and of course my boss is trusting me really much about what I'm doing. But sometimes it's like I really need 3 very easy headlines so I can tell the story. I can tell if we're doing good, if we're not doing good, why we're not doing good. So just speaking really easily, because this industry, like influencer marketing, can get difficult at times. There are lots of metrics you can get lost in. When you are like overseeing multiple markets, maybe there are different trends. So it's very easy to get lost in numbers and like figures, etc. So just be able, and it's not easy, to like take a step back, look at the big picture, and kind of understand what are the 3 key headlines that this person needs to know about all of this.
I love that advice. And I'm sure that your background in PR helps with that too. Like messaging here is so important. And it's not of course, it's not a diss on anyone who doesn't understand. First of all, we have so many metrics. Like I talk to so many different organizations that measure things in completely different ways. There's still not one end all be all way that everyone has agreed upon to measure this practice. And it is newer. So, you and I, having worked in it for a while, we can talk about it all day. But I do have empathy for people who are like, what are you talking? Even people who studied marketing, but maybe they studied marketing, 20 years ago, and they just this wasn't part of their learning. And it's a constant challenge for me to synthesize it down. And I'm sure that you can attribute some of your success to your ability to do that, to package it in a message that can be conveyed to all different kinds of stakeholders within an organization. What is your favorite metric for measuring? Like, does it depend on the campaign? I would assume, but
it does. But I find now, as across industry, I find the engagement rate probably the most relatable. I've learned at Charlotte Tilbury that 3% was that like ratio that we should all aim at. And no matter now the industry, I always have that in my mind, because it might be like not a video led campaign, so you can't really look at video views, for example, which we all know they are super important now. Video views are like 3 times more watched than picture, etc. But it might be not a video campaign. So what do you look at? And I think there are so many metrics, and probably engagement rate is the one that I just have always a look at to make sure that we are on track, because when it's really down, that means that one of the other metric is probably like not right, and we need to deep dive into what didn't work. And it's also quite easy for me to understand and remember. So
no, I like engagement rate too. I also feel like boosting has changed how we're looking at engagement rates now, and like the definition of what is good when we look at an average over time, and how much that skews things. And like sometimes the average will be 6% because one video had, a 700% engagement rate or things like that. But they're keeping us on our toes all of the time. Do you sit down like at the beginning of the year and do a plan? Are you thinking for all 4 quarters what your influencer campaigns are going to be as aligned with launches and things like that? And how much room is there for spur of the moment, like capitalizing on a trend or a conversation that you see happening out there?
I'll talk about UGG now, because it's my current experience. We definitely sit down the beginning of the year, which for us is not January. We are like operating differently on a different fiscal year. Our year starts in April. But anyway, we're just sitting down right now to finalize our spring summer plan. And this is probably one of the things I kind of forgot mentioning before, regarding the differences between beauty and fashion. I think with beauty, you would definitely have to be ready to jump on trends. Like beauty tutorials are a thing in the beauty industry. And if for some reason you are lacking in your collection that products that will help you to jump on the trend, is a massive like deal. So basically the MPD team will be like behind the scenes creating that product for you, because trends are something you don't want to miss. I think with fashion is slightly different, and especially at UGG, and is the thing that I love about working in this brand, that we leave quite a lot of freedom to the talents to interpret what they think UGG stands for. We rarely give like super strict brief when we work on a paid basis, because like we say that UGG is a very like inclusive brand, that is a brand for everyone. So we want to make sure we are not kind of restricting the freedom when it comes to being creative. With that said, we are also very agile and flexible brand when it comes to budget. So if there is something major that happens during the year that we feel like is the right thing to invest on, we'll definitely find a way to make it happen. So we are not that structured as a company that we decide the budget at the beginning of the year
And
and then that is it. We kind of revisit it by quarter, which I think is a good timing. Every 3 months allows you the chance to stay flexible and stay relevant, because it's really hard, like in our job, like influencer, but also from a press point of view now, to establish a plan 12 months before. So it's already tricky for product, because some products might feel quite old 12 months later. But for us, you really have to stay flexible, because only by staying flexible you can be successful, really.
I find something you said at the beginning of that response so interesting, where you were talking about trends in makeup versus trends in fashion. And I think that if we had had this conversation 15 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, you thought about, at least maybe, let me know if you felt like this too. I thought about trends as applying to fashion much more so than makeup. And I feel like creators and influencers have really changed that conversation, where there are all of these. I didn't know about makeup trends, like, you know, in the early 2000s. I knew about makeup and what makeup like was good for my skin, but it wasn't, you know, the latte look or things like that. And creators have changed this so much. And now makeup and beauty is like the trend setter, and fashion is a little bit slower, which I think is really surprising.
It's true. Yeah. And, you know, things can change again. And that's probably the beauty of it. There is no playbook for this. You just need to be, I think, ready to react. The cool thing, but also quite scary, is that influencer can lead this. Like they're leading trends, right? They are the trend leaders. So in, I don't know, 1-2 years time, things can change again, and we can go back to what it was 15 years ago. So it's, on one side, I think it's very exciting, because it's one of those jobs that you can get bored of, because things change so fast and so quickly and constantly that you either change with it as a brand and reinvent yourself, or you'll be left out. So that's one thing. The other thing is also, this is quite scary, because you don't really know where you're going, because you're literally going with the flow. So you'll have a strategy for a brand, like a brand strategy, of course, that is guiding your decision. But at the same time, as we just said, you also need to stay flexible, because at some point your strategy might not work, and you need to take the risk and jump on the trend or whatever change the market is going through, in order not to be left out. So
the context is changing all the time for our work. You also said something in there about like it might go back to how it used to be. And I've been having a lot of conversations about Gen Alpha lately, and the next generation that's coming up. Are you thinking about that at UGG? How to target Gen Alpha?
I mean, it's interesting, because we don't have consumer profile by age, but by interest, which I find really interesting. So we don't really care if who is buying into UGG is 18 years old or, I don't know, 40, as long as, I'm making this up because I'm not going to do specific reference, but as long as they are into music, for example. So that's really interesting. But of course, we need to make sure, no matter the interest and how we target consumer, that we stay relevant. And we can definitely observe new trends at the moment, especially with Generation Alpha. And that they are starting kind of to take distance from social in a way. We have been seeing those like the social detox trend. Again, it is a trend, but we need to be aware, right? So otherwise, again, we'll be left out. So with that in mind, it's probably, again, it comes down to quantity versus quality, right? So more and more, although this is already our ways of working, but more and more we will be prioritizing quality over quantity. So not overloading people with content, because there's so much happening out there. People are already feeling the need of taking a break. So us contributing to that like noise is not going to help. So instead of releasing like tons of content per week, we'll start to release less, but be more insightful maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But also observing trends of like YouTube and longer content is interestingly gaining more attention. Again, just because probably people are getting tired of like scrolling and like don't even paying attention to content, but more like listening into what a brand has to say or what a talent has to say on behalf of a brand or just in general. So just longer content that is more meaningful. Podcasts are like becoming something more and more. I think people need more time to reflect and listen to something, maybe even learn something, which is not a documentary, but like a longer video content, more like longer than a reel that doesn't even say something because it's just images. So it's interesting. I think I personally have lots of hope in the new generation, because it seems like a generation that has learned something, maybe from COVID, maybe from that like break that we all had. Everyone learned something. The new generation was definitely probably more of a shock for them because they were so young, but they've probably learned to, pause more, reflect more, learn more from what happened. And now they're looking for like, more meaningful content, I guess. And this is a challenge for us as a brand, because we keep on asking ourselves, are we enough? Like, because they also are very informed, right? Compared to the previous generation. They know a lot because, of course, they are lucky enough that they have more sources to learn from, etc. But anyway, you as a brand feel constantly judged and be like, okay, are we offering the right content? Are we being enough? Are we being sensitive enough? Are we, So yeah, I think it's definitely going to be the next challenge for everyone. But I also think it's a cycle, because all brands, as I said, needs to change and reinvent themselves as new generation comes up. But this is going to be a good one, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm really excited for it too. And I do think it's going to change our ways of working, but in a positive way, in my perspective. And we're seeing more influencers and runway shows and more offline experiences too, because I think community is something that is top of mind for much of Gen Z and Generation Alpha. But you mentioned the longer videos, and we did a report recently where we saw that Gen Z even prefers 5-minute plus videos on YouTube to learn about products, which is a game change for how a lot of brands consider leveraging influencers or the content that they're putting out online. Well, I feel like I could talk to you all day, but we are running out of time. I think that I was going to ask you to wrap up about changes in the influencer industry that we should think about, but you just touched on that. I'm curious. I mean, maybe you already touched on this too, but do you have any last thoughts on predictions for next year or things that you're especially excited about as we look to the year ahead?
I think you just mentioned that willingness from influencers and people in general out there to have more in-person experience. We are just coming out of a time where like digital events, masterclasses, like bringing people together online was the thing. And I'm actually really excited for all of this to go back to not normal, but to physical.
Yeah.
Personal interaction is one of the things I've been missing the most during COVID, as everyone, but I think for the PR teams in general, like across the globe, it has been like a massive issue, because it was like our bread and butter, and just like learning how to communicate, empathize with people online is not easy. Like being able to read the room through a screen is really difficult. So again, not to reference, but we have also done one massive event recently, probably the biggest one in Europe for a while, in Paris a month ago. Again, bringing people from all around Europe all together for a week in a house. It was so exciting. And like you could tell, and people also said it, they were missing this physical interaction. It was so exciting also to see my team like really enjoying and being all together. It makes such a difference. So yeah, this is probably the thing I'm excited the most. Next year, also like finalizing now plans and budget, looks like it's gonna be like full of physical event, which is a lot of work. I mean, surely organizing an event digitally is not that lots of a hassle as it is like producing an event physically. But it's definitely more exciting for people that works in this industry. So yeah, that's the thing I'm excited the most.
It's very exciting. I want to come to the house next time too.
I'll invite you. Definitely, you're on the list.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Roberta. I love that empathy was a major theme of our conversation, and that's one of the superpowers that you bring towards your career. You can definitely feel it in the interactions that I've had with you throughout the years, and it's really important. So I love that theme here, and I appreciate all of the insight and wisdom that you shared. We're really lucky to hear from you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Fast Track. If you're interested in connecting with Roberta, you can find her LinkedIn profile linked in the show notes.